When a liberal TV host made shocking comments about Khabib Nurmagomedov, the world was left bewildered. The backlash followed immediately, but the real test came when it was time to see how Khabib would react. Would he respond with fiery words or rise above the storm? The response that followed stunned the world, and it's a lesson we all need to hear. Stay as we take you through this unforgettable encounter that will remind you why true strength lies not in power or status, but in standing up for those who need it most. You won't believe Khabib's reaction. It's something that will stay with you long after you hear this story. If you like stories that inspire and touch you, be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel to see even more powerful content. It was a typical evening in the media world where the lines between entertainment and serious discourse are often blurred. The set was buzzing with the usual energy that accompanies a live broadcast. Bright lights, cameras running, and a diverse group of experts ready to dive into the hot topics of the day. The host, a liberal broadcaster known for his sharp tongue and controversial opinions, was preparing to steer the conversation into familiar waters, the intersection of sports, politics, and personal values. The audience was used to his uncompromising approach, eagerly awaiting his fresh take on the most important issues of the day. On this particular evening, the discussion revolved around the role of athletes and their personal beliefs. Should they be allowed to stand up for their beliefs without facing? Should they use their platform to promote specific ideas? Participants were divided in their opinions. Some argued that athletes, as public figures, have an obligation to speak out on social issues, while others felt that they should stay out of politics and just have fun. It was a conversation that could have easily gone unnoticed, but fate had other plans. As the debate raged on, the host, who had a reputation for not shying away from controversial remarks, decided to make his feelings clear. His eyes flashed that familiar spark as he leaned forward, ready to take aim at someone who in his eyes had come to symbolize everything he found irritating about athletes who refused to compromise their personal beliefs. Khabib Nurmagomedov's name, undefeated UFC champion, was mentioned during the discussion. At first, it seemed like a simple mention, a shift to a larger conversation about athletes who stay true to their values despite the consequences. But then the presenter's tone changed. What started as a careless mention of Khabib's strong principles quickly turned into a full-blown tirade. He mocked Khabib's refusal to participate in certain promotional events, calling him too rigid and detached from modernity. The host made sarcastic remarks about Khabib's decision to stay true to his faith, dismissing it as outdated and irrelevant in today's world of flashy sponsors and marketable personalities. He even joked about Khabib's refusal to fight outside of his home country, hinting that it was a sign of weakness. The remarks came fast and furious, each one pierced with disrespect and contempt. For a moment, there was silence in the room. The other panelists exchanged awkward glances, not knowing how to respond to the host's sarcastic comments. It wasn't just criticism, it was personal, directed at Khabib's personality and what he represented. But the presenter, encouraged by the audience's quiet laughter, continued, making more pointed remarks about Khabib's reluctance to participate in glitzy world of sponsorship deals and media appearances that many athletes have happily accepted. He didn't realize that his words would not only alienate a large portion of his audience, but would set off a chain of events that would have serious repercussions. The audience was tired of being lectured by celebrities who made judgments about the personal choices of others from their ivory towers. Khabib's fans, who admired him not only for his prowess in the ring, but also for his unwavering values, were not about to let this go down. As soon as the broadcast ended, social media erupted in fury. Fans flooded the network platforms, expressing their outrage at the host's disrespectful comments. It wasn't just sports fans who reacted. People from all walks of life joined in, rallying around Khabib, whose quiet strength and dedication to his faith has earned him respect far beyond the UFC. Memes mocking the host's ignorance spread at the speed of wildfire, while heartfelt messages of support for Khabib flooded every corner of the internet. What started as a seemingly innocent argument now turned into a social media storm. And that's when the network's phones started ringing off the hook. Advertisers, fearing a negative reaction from their clients, began withdrawing sponsorships. The pressure grew by the hour as the host's words continued to go viral. Network executives, who had been focused on conventional ratings and audience demographics, now found they had to contend with the growing backlash. They found themselves between a hammer and anvil. Should they support their controversial host, or give in to the growing chorus of voices demanding accountability for his remarks? The decision was not easy, but it was clear that the network faced an unprecedented crisis. Heated discussions were taking place behind closed doors, and the fate of the host was becoming more uncertain by the minute. But as the network tried to weather the storm, it was clear that the true center of attention was not the host, but Khabib, whose silence in the face of this controversy only added to the mystique and increased the support he received. The impact of the presenter's controversial remarks could not be brushed off with a simple apology or a quick press release. The impact was instantaneous and spread far beyond the television screen. Social media exploded with not only outrage, but a unified sense of purpose. Clips from the broadcast where the host mocked Khabib's values and lifestyle went viral in a matter of hours. The backlash was swift and merciless. Fans of the former UFC champion flooded Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram with posts supporting Khabib and calling for accountability for the host's actions. Hashtags such as #RespectKhabib and #ApologizeNow began gaining popularity as people from all corners of the world rallied around Khabib's unwavering principles. The wave of public outrage was not limited to Khabib fans. Even people not particularly interested in mixed martial arts rose to the defense of what the presenter disparagingly referred to, a man who, despite the pressures of fame, chose to stay true to his faith and his values. Khabib has always been a symbol of humility, discipline, and loyalty, qualities that have resonated with millions of people, regardless of their background. The presenter's mockery of these qualities felt like an attack on something much bigger than just an athlete. It was an attack on personal integrity, on values that transcended the sports world. As the social media storm continued to intensify, the network found itself having to do damage control. Behind the scenes, executives were hastily convening meetings, trying to figure out how to handle the crisis. It was clear that they had underestimated the power of their host's words. His remarks had crossed the line, and the public was not about to let it go. Advertisers, sensing the growing outrage, began withdrawing sponsorships. Brands that had long been associated with the network's programs began issuing statements of disapproval, distancing themselves from the controversy. Some even hinted at suspending or terminating their partnerships, leaving the network in an increasingly precarious position. The network has always prided itself on its bold approach to media, pushing boundaries, exploring taboo topics, and giving a voice to controversial figures. But now the very thing that made their host so popular has led them into uncharted waters. Debates about athletes and personal values were important, but they were no longer the center of the conversation. What started out as a discussion of sports and ideology turned into a battle over respect, dignity, and responsibility for public figures. The host, meanwhile, found himself at the center of a media maelstrom. His Twitter account, once a place for his sarcastic comments and interactions with followers, was now flooded with angry messages. He tried to deflect the backlash, saying his comments were misunderstood, that they were simply meant to challenge conventional thinking and spark debate. But his attempts to clarify the situation were met with more ridicule. Fans didn't believe it. They saw it for what it was, a poorly executed attack on someone who had always conducted himself with dignity, both in and out of the ring. With each passing hour, the pressure grew. The announcer's apology, when it finally came through, seemed strained and insincere. He claimed he never meant to disrespect Khabib personally, but the damage had already been done. The words left a stain on his reputation that no apology could erase. Worse, the presenter's defenders, the few who tried to rally around him, were drowned out by the overwhelming wave of support for Khabib. Public opinion was clear. The presenter had crossed the line, and he would have to answer for it. As the network pondered its next move, it became increasingly clear that the decision was not about whether the host had the right to express his opinion. Of course, everyone is free to express their opinion. But in this case, it's not about freedom of speech, but about the consequences of reckless use of that freedom. And the consequences were beginning to unfold in real time. The anchor was not only attacking on Khabib's actions, but also on his very essence, on the essence of, made him one of the most respected athletes in the world. Behind closed doors, the discussions became increasingly heated. The network was well aware that it had a responsibility to preserve its reputation, but it also had to consider the loyalty of its audience. And the loyalty of Khabib's fans was undeniable. The buzz was so intense that even those who had never been interested in the UFC before found themselves deeply involved in the controversy. As the days progressed, the network realized that their host's fate was sealed. Sponsors, viewers, and even some of the network's own employees made it clear there was no turning back. Finally, after days of mounting pressure, the network made the inevitable decision. The anchor was fired. His departure was swift and final, and the decision sent shockwaves through the media industry. The network released a statement apologizing for comments made during the broadcast and expressing regret for the harm done. While some applauded the network for taking action, others criticized them for waiting so long to do so. But in the end, it was clear that the anchor's career had gone down the drain, and his reputation would never be the same again. While the media machine was running, the focus shifted back Khabib. Despite the chaos that surrounded him, he remained a beacon of strength, dignity, and calm. Now the world holds its breath, waiting to see how he reacts to the fallout and what lessons this situation will teach us all about respect, values, and the cost of rash statements. As the media frenzy surrounding the controversial comments made by the presenter reached its peak, the world waited with intense curiosity to see how Khabib Nurmagomedov would react. Given his reputation as a quiet, reserved man who preferred his actions to speak louder than words, many assumed Khabib would take the high road, choosing silence over confrontation. But there was a palpable anticipation, a sense of wondering how a man of his status would handle such a direct assault on his character and values. For days, Khabib remained silent. His fans, countless and fiercely loyal, expressed their outrage on his behalf, urging him to speak out and demand an apology. But the former UFC champion, true to his nature, did not rush to respond in a hurry. He understood that sometimes the best way to handle a situation like this is to wait, reflect, and rise above the noise. This was not a man who needed to get into a verbal battle. He knew that his actions on throughout his career had already spoken volumes. The more the world speculated, the more they expected him to react. Each day that passed without comment only added to the mystery and respect he deserved. Khabib's silence was an overwhelming statement in itself. People began to realize that his lack of response was not born out of weakness, but strength. His decision to not dignify the announcer's remarks with a response only reinforced the character that his supporters had always admired. It was as if he was saying, "I don't need to stoop to negativity." Khabib built his reputation on a foundation of respect, not only for his opponents, but for his faith, his family, and his principles. By not responding with anger, he showed the world that true strength comes from within and doesn't require validation from others. But there came a moment when Khabib did decide to speak out, albeit in a way only added to the respect he commanded. His response wasn't given in a fiery press conference or a heated social media post. Instead, he opted for a brief, measured statement that exuded dignity. In his typical calm manner, Khabib said, "Respect is not something you demand, it's something you earn. I have always lived by my values, and I never change because of what someone else says. Everyone is free to speak up, but we are also free to decide how we respond. I choose to move forward." It was a simple message, but its power resonated deeply. Khabib's refusal to engage in a public confrontation not only reinforced his personal strength, but became a beacon of how to handle disrespect with dignity. His statement was not filled with bitterness or condemnation. Instead, it was a clear demonstration that his life's work and principles were far more important than the fleeting opinions of a televangelist. Khabib had always believed in following a path of integrity and discipline, and now he was proving that those values extended far beyond the octagon. What struck people, was the deep humility in Khabib's words. In a world where public personalities often respond to insults with equally harsh rebukes, Khabib showed the world that true champions don't need to stoop to that level. By keeping his response calm and dignified, he elevated the situation from a media spectacle to a lesson in personal strength. The presenter who tried to ridicule Khabib for his beliefs proved only one thing: Khabib's values were unwavering, while the host's words were fleeting and ultimately empty. Khabib's statement was followed by another outpouring of support from his fans and the fellow fighters. They appreciated how he handled the controversy, and their admiration for him only grew. It was no longer about winning or losing inside the octagon. It was about fighting for respect, for dignity, and for staying true to himself regardless of what others might say or do. Khabib's decision to stay above the fray gave people something far more valuable than a simple apology. It gave them an example of how to handle adversity with dignity. Meanwhile, the anchor's career continued to crumble. His attempt to backtrack and clarify his comments only made things worse as more and more people began to see the situation for what it was: a deliberate attack on Khabib's character that was completely unwarranted. Even those who once defended the presenter for his courage began to question his judgment. Advertisers who had stopped supporting the channel did not return, and viewers began to switch in favor of more positive programming. The truth was undeniable. Khabib's class and composure won out, and the host's inflammatory words only revealed his own lack of character. In the end, it was clear that Khabib had won a victory that went far beyond the sport. His reaction wasn't prove the announcer wrong. It was to prove to the world that respect, faith, and values are not just something we hold for ourselves, they are something others can see and respect. Khabib rose above the noise and showed that the strongest people are not those who fight back the hardest. They are those who stay true to themselves regardless of the storm around them. The story of a liberal TV host's downfall and Khabib's dignified response carries a lesson that resonates far beyond the world of sports or media. It's a reminder that true strength is not defined by how loud you can shout or how hard you can retaliate, but by how firmly you can stand up for your values, even when the world around you pressures you to bend. In a world that often rewards the loudest voices and the most sensationalized drama, Khabib showed us that silence, equanimity, and humility can speak volumes. Khabib's response was not just a demonstration of composure, it was the epitome of his unwavering commitment to principles that transcended any media hype. His response set a powerful example to millions of people who may have faced their own challenges. The lesson was simple. In a society that often pushes toward conflict and division, true strength lies in to stand firm in your convictions, even when the world may not understand or agree with you. Khabib's choice to remain reserved, to resist the temptation to pounce, was a demonstration of inner calm and confidence in his own integrity. The host, on the other hand, has built his career on sensationalism, on stirring up controversy for the sake of ratings. In his attempt to trash Khabib, he inadvertently exposed his own shortcomings. His words, once harsh and barbed, have now backfired, leaving him with nothing but the remnants of a tainted reputation and a broken career. It was a stark reminder that words once spoken cannot be taken back, and they carry a weight far beyond what we sometimes imagine. His attempt to belittle Khabib's principles only emphasized his own inability to understand the true value of honesty and respect. The real winner in this story wasn't Khabib's silence or even his fans' passionate defense of him. It was the lesson that was taught to all who witnessed this unfolding drama. We live in a time when people often feel the need to speak out in anger, to right wrongs with the same hostility. However, Khabib's example showed that choosing not to engage in negativity can be a much more powerful form of resistance. In this case, the loudest reaction was not what came out of Khabib's mouth, but what was reflected in his actions and his response. It's easy to get caught up in the maelstrom of outrage on social media, stoking the flames of conflict that can quickly escalate. But Khabib's composure gave everyone reason to stop and think. Sometimes the best course of action is to just back off and stand firm in your beliefs. People like Khabib show us that resilience is not about fighting fire with fire, but standing your ground and letting your actions and character speak for itself. In the end, Khabib proved to be more than just a champion in the octagon. He became a symbol of what it means to live with integrity, humility, and respect for others. His response was more than just a triumph over a TV host. It was a testament to the power of staying true to yourself and the unwavering strength that comes from that. The respect that Khabib has earned not only as an athlete, but also as a human being, only increased after this ordeal. The presenter, meanwhile, faced the consequences of his words. His career, once so promising, now lay in ruins. Advertisers, attracted by his boldness, turned away, leaving him with a tarnished reputation. His attempt to provoke thought instead provoked a backlash, showing that there are some lines that, once crossed, can never be crossed again. He underestimated Khabib's strength, his silent resilience, and the power of standing up for what is right. This story serves as a reminder to all of us that our actions and words matter. In a world where the loudest voices often dominate the conversation, it is the quiet strength of people like Khabib that can really make a difference. Khabib's refusal to respond with anger wasn't just about him. He wanted to teach everyone that true greatness isn't about fighting back with force. It's about standing firm, staying true to yourself, and showing the world what you're made of through your actions, not just your words. Khabib's message was clear, and we all need to get it across. True strength comes not from how we stand up to others, but how we stand up to ourselves and stand firm in our beliefs, regardless of the noise around us, the noise around us, the noise around us.